Hello, everyone. Welcome back to SportsKhabri. Like always, with me are Arnava and Hire from Arun Food and Curious Harry. Today, we're joined by Sarthak Mondal as well, who's a lecturer at the University of Portsmouth. He teaches sports economics there. And guys, today we're only talking about Indian football. We've moved away from the Super Cup for a bit. Just Indian football today. I mean, international football. It is today. Talk about the learnings from India versus Australia, what we can sort of mend and sort of look forward to when the side goes and faces Uzbekistan in a couple of days' time. So all of these things, we'll try to sort of get our lineups in, the changes that we'd probably like to see in this fixture and all of that. But first of all, good evening, Satak, and how are you doing? Thanks so much again for taking your time out and doing this for us.
No worries. Thanks, Rahul. I'm doing great, and it's good to be on the show.
Yep, yep. Sadak, following the Asia Cup closely, and how are you how are you taken to the sort of first game, and what are you looking forward to from the team?
I mean, the first thing is because I don't know. For some reason, not European, British broadcasters have got this tendency of not broadcasting Asian Cup ever. So it's done by an organization called FITE here, and whose app is incredibly difficult to find even on the Play Store. So I couldn't watch the first half of the game, so I was following the updates on Twitter. And because we have a broadcaster here, the AFC page on YouTube is also not allowing us to view it live. So again, abiding by all the copyright laws. However, what I felt was like we played really well in the first half. There is no doubt about that. But in the second half, there were a couple of individual mistakes, I would say, which cost us chances. And if you look back over the years, and Arunava can correct me if I'm wrong, this has always costed Indian football time and time again. Let's go back to the previous Asian Cup. We started with a brilliant win against Thailand 4-1, if I'm not wrong. And then we played against Bahrain and we were drawing that game nil-nil until the 87th minute or something like that. So we lost that game because of an individual mistake. And again, the next game against UAE, we lost that game because of some questionable decisions by the referee, which somehow always seems to happen in games involving Indian football. And there were a couple of questionable decisions in the games against Australia as well. But again, you can't blame the referee really if you are making those individual mistakes, which is costing you the points. So my view for that from that Australia game was that, yeah, it was a good performance in the first half, but there is nothing to be proud of that performance considering all at the end of the day we have 0 points to show for that game. If we had 1 point to show for that game, that would have been a very good performance in my book, considering we haven't played against tier 2 Asian nations for a long time and haven't performed well against them. So nothing to be proud of, but again, some positives to take forward, some positives to build towards, and probably for AIFF and their commercial partners, FSTL, to work out how things can work towards the development of Indian football.
Yep, yep. Guys, everybody in the chat, I know everyone's talking about Super Cup today. Sort of the focus is the national team. So let's stick to that, Arnava. I know you were emotional a couple of days ago when we spoke about it, and um, of course, it's fair enough. I mean, for you, somebody who's been in sort of Indian football for such a long time, over 2 decades, it must be frustrating. But Arnav, but what are you sort of looking forward to when we play against Uzbekistan? Because we know what the things that are wrong. You said them as well, and yeah. But what are you expecting from this crop of boys going into this next game? Anything that you'd like to see different? Try maybe take a few more risks, something like that.
You have to. I think that's the most important thing. And a warm good evening to everyone who's watching and listening. The thing is that again against Australia, the second half exposed where we sort of stand in that sort of Asian football ladder, and it's a question of who are we playing on a regular basis to try and also improve ourselves, also to test ourselves. We have gotten a little bit of carried away over the last few years that we're thinking that with the ISL, we've improved a lot, right? And the reality is, you saw this season Mumbai City taking on some of the best teams in the Champions League, and you realize the gap between us and teams from a Saudi Pro League, from an Uzbek league, from Iran. And now you see that also in the Asian Cup, and that's going to be the real test against Uzbekistan. What kind of mentality do we show? I think the first half mentality was strong. We gave a fighting performance to that. But I feel that in the second session, we were just trying to avoid conceding a goal, and then mistakes are bound to happen, and that's natural. That is natural. That is football. There will be matches where you're able to fight off teams for 90 minutes, like India did against Qatar in 2019. But the end result in this is that against Uzbekistan, we'll have to be a little bit more enterprising. We'll have to also take some risks, because otherwise the result is already written on the books, and the question is only, when is Uzbekistan going to score? And that's the question that one has to see, and how India set itself up, because Timacha has said he wants to change a few things. 2 or 3 changes I think are looking evident, if not 4 or 5. What he's done in the past, and the question is, do you then unsettle the team, or do you rather stick to what you've had so far? So there's these questions with the coach really has to answer. And the second half also, as a point to me, is it's not about that we go all out and attack Australia, but rather when we play against Uzbekistan, if we're able to hold them goalless in the first session, that we have to create these attacks to reduce the pressure on our defense. Because it was sort of, say, a 50-plus minute onslaught on India in the second half, and that is not going to work. And that's something that we need to work on.
Yep. Fair enough. After looking at other teams, sadly, India is the weakest team in the tournament, says Kakao, Uzbekistan. We're not going to score a single goal. I mean, it's possible. But anyways, Hiren, I heard Igor Stimac say in his press conference that India were preparing the changes to go gun-ho after 60 minutes in that game. Do you believe that?
But that is the big question. If you going with the planning of 60-minute defending, and then in last 30 minutes we are going to attack. But the question is, can our player hold up for that 60 minutes? We considered at the 15 minutes. I think previously we also discussed this many times again. If you see 2023's all the higher ranked teams matches, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, China, where Qatar, when we considered on those 15 minutes of second half, we always considered a goal, and that is the crucial part. We don't learn from that thing, and still we are considering repeating the same mistake again and again. So that is the biggest issue. If you are going with the plan, I don't you don't mind 60 minutes defending, then 30-minute attack, but are we able to defend those 60 minutes? We every time we consider that goal, and then we are giving an excuse that in 60 minutes we didn't hold up the, you can say didn't consider the goal, and then we have to go defending. So that's not going to work. I think India a little bit has to take a risk. I don't see always, because this kind of player, और जो हमारे पास अभी जो जिस क्वालिटी के प्लेयर है, I don't see they hold up for a 60 minute also. I think they are a player who can give you a maximum fight for a 40-45 minutes. Then definitely they are going to make mistake, as mentioned. It is bound to happen. You can't do anything. So I think India needs to take more risk, and then only you can pressurize the opposition. Otherwise, it's always that one moment, either from your player's mistake, either from opposition's individual brilliance, you are going to concede that goal. And then we always have to, you can say, go a little bit deep to not concede second goal. So that's not going to work. I think we need to take that risk and try to pressurize opposition also.
Vineet says India has to be careful when in attacking transitions. The rest of the defense needs to be assured when this happens, is what he says. Again, fair enough, but the question I really want to know is, guys, do you believe the coach when he says after 60 minutes we were actually going to go and sort of try to push Australia, and we would try
just
to go
Rahul,
at them?
Rahul, just add to one point there. After in Australia game also, in second half we added one extra attacker player, but we didn't still able to do anything. We have a Liston Colasso as a number 10. So you gone with the 4 attacker, and still you didn't able to, you can say, go into the opposition's final third. So that shows that you are going with the 4-5 attacker doesn't mean you are going to attack. You need that kind of player and that kind of you can say build up. Then and only you can reach to the final third. Against quality side, if you are going with the 11 attackers also, then you can't go into the you can say in the opposition box. So
Yeah.
that's the evidence. अब आप last 30 मिनट में जो उसने substitution किया सारे के सारे attacking substitution ही थे. आप देखिए जितने भी थे आकाश मिश्रा को लाया यहाँ पे फुल बैक के तौर पे देखिए नहीं तो हम एक्सपेक्ट कर रहे थे कि निखिल पुजारी की जगह पे प्रीतम कोटाल आ जाएगा तो थोड़ा सा आपको वहां पे डिफेंसिव मिल जाएगा लेकिन still go with the Akash Mishra, आपका लिस्टन कोरासो आ गया. Still you didn't able to go into the particularly in second half. आप उनके बॉक्स में ही मतलब मुश्किल से आई थिंक एक आध दो बार पहुंचे होंगे उससे ज्यादा देखा नहीं. So I think that is the big question.
Yeah, absolutely. Sathak, worried for India on an attacking front?
I mean, the major point, and what I feel from an Indian football point of view, specifically for this national team, is I'm very confused regarding the culture or the brand of football that we are trying to play. Like, what are we trying to actually do? Like, if you go back to the Stephen Constantine era, before it goes too much, I mean, I would say we played much more boring football than this. But then there was a brand associated with it, which was like against tier 3 or tier 2 nations, we try to score in the first 30 minutes and then hold on to it for our dear life. And as Arunava said, that is not going to work. That didn't work even in the in the Stephen Constantine era. But then there was still a brand. What I am trying to understand when I watch this team play is like, yeah, we do very well in the SAF championship, which is like, I would say, even the Super Cup teams would defeat some of those national teams that are playing in there. Uh, However, when I look at it, I'm like, what is the brand of football that you are portraying? How do you want to basically, you can say, motivate or build that culture or fandom that people are interested in watching you as a team play? And unfortunately, I don't find that against Uzbekistan, we might be lucky to get a point. There is a real possibility we might get a point, even if there is a 5% chance we might get a point. But about individual mistakes, about what we are trying to do, those are the things that needs to be sorted. And if you take the technical ability of Indian players, I wouldn't say the technical ability of those Indian players are far behind those of, say, players from Uzbekistan or Syria. The technical ability is there. The problem is the mental ability to take on those pressure, to basically play beyond that 60th minute. Because 60 मिनट के बाद सिर्फ इंडिया का प्लेयर का ही नहीं, ऑस्ट्रेलिया का प्लेयर का भी, सीरिया का प्लेयर का भी, साउथ कोरिया के प्लेयर का भी, everyone's legs are tiring, right? But then they have that mental capability and that has been built in them. Ki, yes, we are going to now push through, get that second wind in us, something which is missing in Indian football. And again, we can have a debate about this all day long, but probably not the right time to have it at the moment. Probably focusing on what Igor Stimac can do as it for the Indian team, how it can get out those required 4 points, probably.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the conversation we're trying to have also, guys, that what can this Indian side do to sort of really give these other sides a run for their money and try to make it into the knockouts? Murli is saying lack of strikers in India. Do you think there's a major problem other than Sunil Chetty? I think something that we've spoken about a lot of times, but for
No, Rahul, I think
yeah,
it is not even a striker issue. I think if you
yeah,
see, we
yeah.
have so many wingers in this squad, and it didn't matter who our attacking players were in this game. We were not able to attack. The only player who was able to create something of the sorts was in the first 15-20 minute chunk. Period. So the question is not if Sunil is supposed to create something. Sunil had one brilliant chance and should have scored again. And he's done it very often for us. But the point is, otherwise, Sunil didn't get even one ball in a dangerous position. So how are you going to create? And I think Sarthak hits on a very, very important point, is that, and this is not an Indian problem. I think that's a problem of a lot of clubs and a lot of national federations. When they talk about their style of football, what kind of football they want to play, again, tiki-taka, only Barca and Spain can, to some extent, I would say Germany can play, right? The rest of the world wants to play it, but they can't. So our question is, am I as a national coach, do I understand what kind of players I have? What the level of my football is? Because I said that yesterday. Watch the last 3-4 minutes of Igor Stimac's post-match press conference, which was covered by no one. Actually, Igor threw his team under the bus, right? He actually said a lot of truths that Igor Stimac normally doesn't say, because you saw the disappointment in his face, because he thought my team is further down the road. And the reality for us is, again, we're talking about 3 points, 4 points, 5 points. I'd be happy if we can score a goal at this stage. Let's be realistic at this stage. Again, I would love us to top the group with 9 points and go on and win this tournament. But the reality is we have to get our basics right. And the point here is, we need to understand where we stand. And again, what I said yesterday, we need to rectify at different levels the mistakes so that Indian football as a national team can move on. Because whatever we said about Stephen Constantine and everything about his defensive style of play, but I think the most attacking game I have seen an Indian team play against a decent quality side was in that 4-1 win against Thailand.
Thailand, yeah, exactly. And the other point, just I will try to back that up. So, we hosted a World Cup in 2017, the men's World Cup, under 17 World Cup. We hosted, I believe, the under 17 Women's World Cup as well. We hosted the AFC Asian Women's Cup. From a development standpoint, what has the AIFF done? The ex office bearers, the new office bearers, why don't we have a national football center of excellence? Why don't we have that? So there are a lot of deficiencies, and of course,
No,
if we
but Sarthak, that exists in Kolkata, right? You have a center of excellence. The question is not the center of excellence. The question is, now you're building a FIFA center of
yeah,
excellence, so to say, as well. The question to me is, what are the boys teaching? I have seen the under 15s here in Germany, under 16s, under 17s over here, and I felt at under 15 level, the boys were actually at their best.
and
You know,
also
that's scary.
Arunava,
If I
yeah,
look at Amarjit Kiam, a good example. Amarjit Kiam was fighting with under 15, under 17 Bundesliga boys.
yeah, and
Now,
also Arunava, I will just point out, going back to the previous question about Sunil Chetri, what I think, like from a not a coaching standpoint, but from a development standpoint, what we are lacking is we are trying to replace Sunil Chetri. What we should instead try to do is replace those 50 dribbles, 70 crosses, those 5 successful crosses, or 10 successful crosses, those 10 goals. We are focusing too much on Sunil Chetri. We are not focusing on the team. Like a very good example of that would be looking at Manchester City. They lost Gundogan, right? Who was at the center of their midfield. I mean, did they try to replace Gundogan? No, they didn't. They tried to replace the productivity of the team, that output of the team. That's something which we are lacking within the Indian system, I would say. We are focusing on replacing one man. I'm like, okay, Sunil Chetri, brilliant. He has scored goals. He's the third highest goal scorer, but focusing on replacing just him and not building the entire team up, that's not going to get us anywhere.
Yep. Hiren, sort of when I sort of picked up that question, what I also wanted to say was, yeah, he's pointing out Sunil Chetri. We don't have a replacement. Of course, we don't. But the problem is not Sunil Chetri. So we're not even getting the ball to him. So there's in transition, we're just not able to play, right? We're not able to get it through midfield, spray it out wide, get those crosses in. Basic football stuff, we're just not able to do. Hiren, so what are you expecting from this side in this match? What is, from an attacking perspective, what more do you want to see?
Attacking point of view, definitely, I think completely agree with you on the holding up, or you can say कि breaking the lines. I think वो हमारे प्लेयर की, I think अगर आप देखेंगे तो क्वालिटी वाइज I don't see कि उतना ज्यादा वो है comparative to Uzbek's players. And वो हमने नवबोर्ग एंड मुंबई सिटी के मैच में भी देख लिया था कि even with the 4 or 6 foreigners, you can't, but those 15 minutes I think Mumbai City were मतलब I think completely on a, you can say कि schoolboyed by uh, Novo और Namangal. I think those 15 quality minutes from the Uzbek side, and वहीं पे उन्होंने गेम को खत्म भी कर दिया था. तो आई थिंक सेम गेम प्ले उनका इधर भी रहने वाला है. उनको पता है कि इंडिया कांट, यू कैन से कि होल्ड अप फॉर 90 मिनट. So they find those 15-20 minute patches in the throughout the matches कि जहाँ पे वो फुल ऑन प्रेसिंग इंटेंसिटी विल बी हाई अटैकिंग आएंगे and वहां पे हमारे प्लेयर किस तरह से रिस्पॉन्स करते हैं क्योंकि जब वो भी अटैक कर रहे होंगे देयर विल बी ए स्पेसेस एंड आई थिंक ऑस्ट्रेलिया के सामने कहीं ना कहीं हमने जो मतलब सेकंड हाफ के जो 15 मिनट थे हम हर वक्त वही गलती करते कि जब सामने वाली टीम फुल ऑन अटैकिंग आती है तब हमारा कोई भी प्लेयर एक रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी या फिर जो आप बोल रहे हो ना कि बॉल होल्ड अप करके एक काउंटर अटैक नहीं बिल्डअप कर पाता है दैट इज द बिग इश्यू विद अस हम डिफेंड ही करते रह जाते हैं फिर वो मतलब मौका ही नहीं मिलता कि हम ओपोजिशन बॉक्स में एक बॉल भी लेके जाते हैं तो दैट विल बी क्रूशियल कि क्या हमारे एक आध दो प्लेयर ऐसे ट्रांजिशन करके जैसे दैट्स व्हाई आई नीड ए ब्रेंडन फर्नांडिस ही इज दैट क्रिएटिव प्लेयर जो यहाँ पे लाइन ब्रेक कर सकते हैं आपके फॉरवर्ड प्लेयर्स को यहाँ पे थोड़ा सा गेम में ला सकते हैं अदर देन दैट आई डोंट सी कि उस तरह से आप बिल्डअप कर पाओगे सो दैट विल बी क्रूशियल कि क्या आप उस तरह का काउंटर यहाँ पे बिल्डअप कर पाते हो बट अनफॉर्चुनेटली इंडिया ने इस तरह की गेम जैसे आई थिंक सर ने कल भी बोला था कि कुवैत वाला गेम परफेक्ट एग्जांपल है कि आपने जो गोल वहां पे चांगते ने क्रॉस डाल के जो मारा था वो परफेक्ट आपका काउंटर गोल था तो इस तरह के मोमेंट आपको ज्यादा प्रोड्यूस करने पड़ेंगे उज्बेकिस्तान के सामने अदरवाइज तो मतलब आई थिंक दे विल कम इन अ full intensity in those 15-20 minutes and you eventually gonna concede that goal.
And Hiren, very important point. I think if we want to learn also, and those of you who are watching some of the matches in the Asian Cup, I think the best example was Japan against Vietnam. Vietnam scored 2 goals from free kicks, right? So, but they got into those situations to get those free kicks. So we need to be able to put that. We don't need to put constant pressure. We will not be able to do that, and against none of the teams in this tournament. So we have to be smart in our play, allow the ball, allow them possession. But the point is, if you look at the Australia game, is Australia to me never got nervous. Australia was sure at some stage we're going to score. And you need to break that sort of that Australia or Uzbekistan can't get the feeling is that we'll sneak in a goal in the worst case. We will win this game. We need to break that rhythm, that momentum. And we didn't do that, especially in that second 45 against Australia. We allowed them to play. And then you do the mistakes, you commit mistakes. Again, and mistakes or brilliance are part of the football game. Otherwise, people wouldn't be scoring goals. And it sadly happened the way it is sadly, that it came in that game day.
I mean, again, breaking Hiren's and Arunava's point, as I pointed out, that's like the psychological thing. Like, we put all our effort in the first 60-70 minutes and last के 20 मिनट में हमारे पास कुछ बचता नहीं है. Opposition, they think like, हाँ, last के 15 मिनट में we will somehow manage to score. I mean, I don't think we have got, like, if this was a Indian team was a car, we have only got one gear. We don't know how to flick that switch, and the other teams are too comfortable playing against us. I mean, like, if you look at some of the best teams in the world, or not even the best, half decent teams, like, they have got different gears to their game. Like, India against Australia, India had 29% possession, right? I mean, for example, when Argentina played Saudi Arabia in the World Cup, Saudi Arabia had less than 29% possession, but it was about what they were doing off the ball. And if you look at that, you can see that massive difference, that psychological standpoint. Our psychology is, as Hiren pointed out, concede नहीं करना है, score करना तो भूल जाओ, 0-0 रखना है, कैसे भी 0-0. And with that 0-0 mentality, we will always concede. We'll always concede one goal somehow or the other, and that has always been a problem for India, not just in this tournament, in all the tournaments across the years. So I think beyond this tournament, we have to look not just at this tournament, but rather for the long term in how we break this kind of psychology. I mean, we have got World Cup qualifiers coming up as well, if I'm not wrong. And
Yes.
that group, when I look at that group, on paper, that is a group we can sneak out of into the third round. That is a group we can sneak out of in the third round. But if we can't score goals, how are we going to sneak out? I mean, if our psychology is like हमें concede नहीं करना है, हम we are never going to make it to the third round. I mean, from that group, we have the capability to get 9 or 10 points in those 6 games, and that will be enough to take us through to the third round. But given how we are playing and Asian Cup का, if we fail to score a goal, उसका सदमा रहेगा, and that will take a hit on our performance in the immediate future, not probably in September, October, तब तक बहुत late हो चुका होगा. We have qualifiers coming up in March and June, if I'm not wrong.
in
So
Yeah.
March.
yeah, so we have to build up towards those qualifiers, if not for the Asian Cup or thinking about making it to the second round.
Yeah, I completely agree on the sort of psychological domino effect that we see in football, at least that momentum sort of thing that creeps in. But at least for this tournament, Arnava, just picking up on something that Sarthak mentioned,
Mm.
which was that we just don't have it in us to play beyond that 60-minute mark, and we can't, we're unable to break that barrier. Do you think early substitutions can help? Because we have to look for sort of practical solutions within what we have. Do you think probably substitutions around the 50-55 minute mark to just give fresh legs, allow your sort of players, like bring in fresh legs to run and at least help out in defense or something like that? Is that something that we can explore as a team?
Maybe even at halftime.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
might even go as early as that, because I think the point here for us is we are playing in the first two matches, and to some extent also Syria. If the way look at the way Syria played against Uzbekistan, we're playing against team who play at a pace and a level which our players normally don't play in the ISL or even with the national team. That's the reality, which means that it's not just that your legs are tired, but you're mentally tired as well. And then these kind of things creep in. And that's why I'm also saying it doesn't make sense to blame Gurpreet for that goal, because it happens. Because funnily, everyone was talking about Amrinder and wanted Gurpreet in after the Qatar match. So the point is, it doesn't. Again, these dominoes are like, you can take out someone, or a chess game. You can take someone off and put someone else in. This issue will remain in this squad. What you have available, you'll have to work with it. I think a good example was, to me, Apuya. Apuya at Mumbai City, or even in the games that he's played in the recent past for the national team, always tried to create something. Even Suresh tried to create something. They did not even get into that situation of creating something. They were always running after people, trying to plug holes, plug holes, plug holes. And you saw even Manvir, what we're talking yesterday, Manvir became another right back because there was so much pressure on that side. And the interesting part that the Australians have clearly said, I've read multiple reports, I've watched a lot of stuff, they said, Goodwin had a terrible game. And the point is, how do you break that sustained pressure? So you have to sort of, try and create those counter-attack situations. And this is something where in that 20-25% of ball possession, you have to make it count. And the best example, again, Sarthak said Saudi. For me, the best example is Japan in the World Cup against Spain, against Germany. In one of the games, they didn't even have 20% of the ball, but they scored 2 goals. And that is something that, can you get into that mold? Can you create those opportunities either for a Sunil or for a Manvir, a Changte or Mahesh, whoever is in those positions, that they get at least a shot on target? And, the
Yeah,
Aussie goalkeeper or the Uzbek goalkeeper is like, okay, something can happen. I mean,
yeah,
Matt Ryan was standing 30, 40, 50 yards in front of his goal.
yeah.
I mean, he was not even bothered. And that is something, how do you get that in 4 days? It's going to be difficult, because the Indian players will already carry a little bit of a tiredness from this game. That's one. There are players, Deepak Tangri hasn't played much football in the last few years. So it was his debut as well. I think a lot of people forget that. So that what he did was very, very good on that day. So Igor Stimac has some tough calls to make in regard to, how do I set up my team, and what is the message that I pass on to my team is, how are you going to, first of all, defend, but how am I going to work, either try and create some sort of possession, get a little bit, put my foot on the ball, or how can I counter the opponent?
Mm.
I mean,
I just want to.
the bigger question
Nini,
here
continue.
is, uh, from a man management perspective, what I think is, it's a question to Igor Stimac. And as Arunava pointed out, like, you want to bring on substitutions as early as the 45th minute. And I totally agree with that. Because speaking about the capability to surprise the opposition, this poses a question to Igor Stimac. Like, do you have, like, you definitely have got the players, but how do you put that psychological pressure on the opposition. Like they might have thought that he might not make any change. Igor Stimac has made a change, and how are they going to cope with that in the first 15 or 20 minutes of the second half? I mean, the best chance, if India scores a goal, the best chance we have is probably the first 20 minutes of first half and probably that 10-minute slot between 45th and 55th minute in the second half. Without that, we are not going to score any goal in this tournament. That's the only two slots we can score some goals. But again, landing those psychological punches on the opposition, the questions need to be asked to the management as well.
Yeah. Yep.
I think
Yeah.
Rahul, I just want to add one point there. I think in-game management of the Ego Steaming is not up to the mark for me, to be honest. I think in 2023 also, I think there are a couple of matches कि जहाँ पे उसके जो substitution है वो उस तरह से work नहीं कर पाए. There are मतलब we seen at the highest level कि there are a couple of managers जो यहाँ पे चाहे सर ने आई थिंक राइटली मेंशन किया कि हाफ टाइम इंडियन प्लेयरों से आप मतलब अगर आप एक्सपेक्ट कर रहे हो कि आपको 90 मिनट दे देगा तो वो तो आपको पता है कि उसकी कैपेबिलिटी नहीं है. यू नीड दैट विद द 5 सब्स्टिट्यूशन. आई थिंक वी कैन डू मच बेटर. आई थिंक द टीम लाइक इंडिया और उसके लिए आई थिंक 5 सब्स्टिट्यूशन रूल इज मच फेवरेबल कि आप फ्रेश लेग्स ला सकते हो अच्छी तरीके से और ज्यादा आप गेम फ्लो इंप्लीमेंट कर सकते हो. बट there is a one question of quality substitution also कि what are the players you selected for the bench is up to the mark कि यहाँ पे क्या बोलते हैं कि जो रिप्लेस प्लेयर कर रहे हैं उसको टक्कर दे पाए या फिर उससे कुछ ज्यादा बेटर निकलवा पाए. एंड आई थिंक अभी तक जितने भी मैचेस उसने हायर टीमों के सामने देखा है उसमें मेरे को लगता है कि कहीं ना कहीं उसकी जो मिस्टेक रही है वो सब्स्टिट्यूशन में उस तरह से इम्पैक्टफुल सब्स्टिट्यूशन नहीं ला पाया कि जिससे गेम का जो क्या बोलते हैं कि फ्लो है उसको इंडिया की ओर यहाँ पे क्या बोलते हैं कि कर सके. So I think that's the one of the area कि जहाँ पे ईगो स्टीम मेरा लगता है कि लेक कर रहे हैं.
I mean, again, that is, आपने जैसे point out किया, that is a problem with the football culture within our country as well. Apart from a few players, a lot of those players are basically direct man-to-man replacements. They are not offering me anything different than their replacement, and that is a big problem. So, for example, like if I'm replacing a central midfielder with a central midfielder, if I'm trying to break a deadlock, the new central midfielder I will bring on is someone who has that creative spark in him, who wants to go forward and support that transition rather than the same mold of player. And that's something we unfortunately not just have on the bench, but you can say lack in professional Indian football as well.
Yeah, interesting actually, guys. We are talking about the squad. We're talking about sort of changes and things that we'd like to see differently. Before we move
Rahul,
on,
one point. I think you saw against Australia, Graham Arnold brought on the second goal, so to say. Right, the two players who came on within a minute combined, and Boss scored the second goal, and the game was done and dusted. So our substitutions impact players, and Hiren very well said, that you can question the substitutions. I would also go the timing of the substitutions. An 89th minute substitution makes no sense. Our players, we should be done by the 80th minute with depending on how the match goes to with our substitutions. And I still say that one or two substitutions could have been done at halftime. And the point is are you taking off the players who are doing well, or are you taking off the players who are, for whatever reasons you think, are not playing well? And that's, again, that can be debated. So therefore, yeah, it's for Stimac. The question remains is finding the right starting 11, and then in his head having, so to say, at least two substitutes ready to either at halftime or around the 60th minute to put on, depending on how the match goes. If it goes like Australia, I need to have that ready.
Yeah, yep.
And that if you saw the Indian bench, they were discussing a lot. Stimac with Mahesh Gowley and with Trevor Sinclair, they were having a lot of discussions until they finally went on and made a substitute.
Yeah. Oh, just lost Arnavaz. Sorry, guys. But yeah, Ranveer Singh can't defend 90 minutes against quality oppositions, period, which is fair enough. Exactly what I think we've also said. Yeah, I think Arnavaz back. Okay, before Arnava comes on, Hiren and Sarthak, there are suggestions in the chat that Akash Mishra might be fit. There were scares that he wouldn't. So, any idea, Hiren or Sadak, on Akash Mishra's fitness and if he is potentially a starter for this game?
I think उसको छोटा सा knock था, so I think it's not too much concerning. So I think he will be available against Uzbekistan. But that will be interesting if we start on the left side. I think Subhasis Bose has done very well against Australia. So I would prefer Subhasis because you need that defensive solidarity also. It just can't be ki, you are going all out attack. Then you are also going to consider a lot of goals. So that's one of the things you have to be going with the balance. And for me, I think I would rather. We want to see a number 10 to start with to create a little bit more chances in first half particularly because I think हमारा जो generally रहा है कि start first half में और particularly first 15-20 minutes में we have been really good against quality opposition also. So I think that's
Hmm.
where if you have a one more you can say creative player, then I think the chances to score a goal I think is much higher. So I want to see in midfield a number 10 to someone like Brendan. Maybe he goes to make goes with the Northern Mass also. But I would prefer Brendan Fernandes to create those chances. And if he able to score in the first half, then that would be a big boost for us.
Okay.
I mean, from my point of view, uh, it's about like 11 chess pieces, right?
Hmm.
What are you trying to achieve as a team? And again, speaking back culture and everything, all of that point, what are we trying to do? How do we counter the opposition? And I'm sure like the Indian management by this point has a pretty good idea what team Uzbekistan is going to play and what kind of game they are going to play, which is again, of course, putting pressure on India from the first minute because they and as pointed out, I would rather play Shubhashish over Akash Mishra uh, unless I am playing a 3-5-2 or something.
Hmm.
Then
Yeah.
it makes probably sense to push Akash Mishra a bit up on that left wing back side and have Shubhashish as the wide center back. But again, if we are wanting to implement that, the football mentality and sense within this Indian team needs to be at least 200% better than it is right now currently. So we are not at that situation, sadly. Uh, Again, as I said, the technical ability is there. We do not lack in the technical ability. We lack in the mental ability. I mean,
Hmm.
it's about being brave enough to attempt those passes. It's about having the confidence in yourself to make a pass that will break the lines and set one of the forwards free. I mean, like, we over short distances, we pass as good as any other player in the world or any other team. We have that capability. What we do not have the capability is when someone puts pressure on us, दिमाग से थोड़ा सोच के कि आगे क्या करना है, how can I break this, how can we do not have that. So it's not a question of technical ability, it's a question of mental ability, and surely there is a lot of work to be done in this space, whether it is being done in FIFA Center of Excellence or the Center of Excellence of Football in Calcutta or इन AIFF headquarters में भी पता नहीं कहाँ करेंगे, but करना तो है, वरना we are never forget qualifying for the World Cup. We are never going to make it past the group stage of AFC Asian Cup. We are at a stage where we might qualify for the Asian Cup every single year, but अगर हमें एशियन कप के सेकंड स्टेज में जाना है, we have to score goals and we have to win matches. And again, speaking of that culture of football fandom in India, people say a lot ki why doesn't there are a lot why is not there are not a lot of fans watching Indian football. I mean, we are a very success hungry country, right? We followed our national teams or national athletes for success. Let's be very honest about it. And forget qualifying for the third round of the World Cup. If we can qualify for the knockouts of the Asian Cup somehow. Not this year, maybe next time. This year we are probably not qualifying. Come 2027, if we qualify for the second round of the World Cup, I mean that will be a national news. I mean, like, people complain about cricket being the sort of national sport, although it is not. We don't have a national sport. I mean, cricket wasn't hugely popular in India. Cricket became popular in India post the 1983 World Cup when the nation got what it was hungry for, success. I mean, badminton waned in popularity, but then Saina and Sindhu came along, took that popularity. Even to a sort of extent, boxing wasn't popular in India, but then it soared in popularity when we had Vijender Singh, Mary Kom in those years. Now we have sudden interest in athletics because of Neeraj Chopra. So again, club level football, okay, very good. That's a different agenda. But for you to have eyeballs on the national team, you need to perform at the international level. And of course, playing friendlies against Nepal and Bhutan and Bangladesh is not going to improve us. We have to play friendlies against much better oppositions, probably the likes of Iran and Saudi, even from an Asian perspective, to improve ourselves. I mean, of course, they wouldn't want to play against us because we are still not at their level, but we can convince them probably with our performance. I mean, like, the way, nothing to be proud of the way we played against Australia, but again, given the geopolitical relations between India and Australia right now, I wouldn't be surprised if we play a friendly against Australia in the next 2 or 3 years. If AIFF wants to get it done, they can get it done. I mean, there are a lot of things that needs to happen behind the scenes, but of course, we can play against Australia. We can again play against teams from North Africa who are good enough tier 2 teams in those countries. Like, we need to recognize where we are at. We can't be the top nation in Asia or even the top 8 in Asia straight away, but what we can recognize is where we are at right now and take a step by step progress. What can we do to
Yeah,
reach the
yeah,
immediate next stage? What is
absolutely.
our immediate next goals? And let me be very honest, like, about the strategic document, India 2024 2047, the strategic objectives of AIFF. I mean, I'm sad to say that it's just wish list on a postcard. I mean, it's all written that we want to get this done, we want to get this done. Good, brilliant. I would be happy to see all of these things. But the real question is, there is nothing about how we are going to fund those and what are the tangible steps that we are going to take to make those happen. So a lot of cultural changes need to happen in Indian football if we are to progress as a footballing nation. I mean, like, a lot of us in India, when we watch club football, we watch European leagues, either the La Liga or the Premier League or the Champions League. Why do we watch it? Because we get to see the best players play in those leagues of the world, right? And
Mhm.
sorry to take the eyeballs away from the national football team, uh, but we need to recognize that the ISL, at least in the next 25 to 30 years or whatever comes after it, is not going to be the top league in the world. It is not going to be. But what it can be is probably a destination for uh, Southeast Asian players or tier 2 West Asian players. We need to make sure that we are using the ISL as a commercial driver for football in the country, which it has failed to do so far in the 10 years, which its predecessors failed to do. And the focus of AIFF, they need to take away their focus from the commercial aspects of the game and they need to focus on the developmental aspects of the game. I mean, of course, you have separated the league from the national federation, right? Earlier, it used to be all done by AIFF. So let the commercial partners take care of the commercial aspect and AIFF completely focus on the developmental aspect, how they can do it. And probably, I don't know, revival of Santosh Trophy in a proper way where it is televised, revival of those uh, school tournaments or age group tournaments to cast wider that scouting network so we can get those players in early into the system and in that FIFA center of excellence or center of excellence of football in Calcutta, wherever, so that we can build those culture from early years. We can have that mentality of those players, so when they play against teams like Australia, Uzbekistan, Syria, they are not afraid to make those passes. Because, I mean, if you look at the Indian players, the body language of Indian players when they were playing, you could see that psychologically they are afraid to make those passes into the final third. They are afraid that what if we concede the ball there And what if we concede a goal? I mean, that is bound to happen if the opposition is going to keep the pressure on for 90 minutes. So think creatively, work with probably sports psychologists about how you can basically cross that mental barrier. That needs to be done, because if we can cross that, let's be honest, football, the standard of national football, in some games, like in some games when we probably in the SAF championship, some games when India play, I'm like, wow, where has this come from? We are playing amazing. But in some games, it's like, yeah, back to square one again. This is the same old India I have been watching since 2004. And that cannot go on if we want to progress as a football nation.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think Satak, again, speaking about importance of grassroots and development at a very young level as well. But again, back to the game, guys. Against Uzbekistan, the midfield is an interesting topic. Hiren spoke about wanting Brandon in there. Anurag saying Thapa, Apuya, and Suresh will be his preferred choices. Arnava, anything on Sahal? Do we know if he's potentially available? Not there for this for sure.
See, the problem with Sahal is very simple, that this boy has been out for now nearly a month. And this is a level of football which we, again, as I want to reiterate that point, which we don't play normally. And to put him into this game and to expect to Sahal directly to perform would be unfair on him. And I think it would be a burden also for the team. So the question is, if Sahal is going to play anything, maybe if he's match fit, then maybe he can play a few minutes as a substitute towards the end. But from my understanding is it's third match or no match. So therefore, let's hope. But my point is very, very clear that someone who's been out for a month cannot just walk into a team like this. We had a situation a little different with the longer injury was Baichung Bhutia. But I think Bob Houghton knew that I need Baichung Bhutia not only just as a footballer, but as being, so to say, the captain of the team. And that was kind of a different scenario. But in this situation, to put in Sahal, I think would be gambling too much. And looking at how Igor thinks, I would think that Thapa would be his preferred choice even over Brandon if he's picking someone. So the question is, how fit is Deepak Tangri after those 90 plus minutes, because he put in a shift? Does it turn out to be Suresh, Apuya and Thapa maybe? Because he said he's going to make 2, 3, 4 changes. And then the question is, does for example Manvir stay, or does Changte stay? Does Mahesh come in? Does Liston come in? So there are few questions that can be asked.
Yep. Guys, any other changes that you guys want to see in the lineups for this Uzbekistan game?
बस mentality change कर दो यार.
I don't think so. There will be any other changes. Maybe in a fullbacks, I think Akash Mishra. But I think Ego streaming जो press conference में बोलता है वो करेगा भी नहीं, वो भी 100% sure नहीं है. So let's वो तो मतलब I think sir couple of days में made rightly कि you can't predict Ego streaming starting 11.
Yeah. Any changes out wide? Liston potentially or no? Not happening. Nah.
Could be. I mean, the question to me is also, let's see who comes tomorrow to the press conference. So that player is not starting. So, so that's another thing. That whoever
that's
comes
the
to the press conference.
Thing.
So I hope that Gurpreet or Sandesh or Sunil don't come to the press conference tomorrow. So otherwise they're off.
But I think I would, Nene, to be honest, sir, I would prefer Sunil Chhetri to come in the one of the press conference at least.
But then he doesn't start, no.
I mean, the question here is probably to Arunava. I would want to ask, and probably this is a question for all the Indian fans. I mean, like, of course, Sunil Chhetri is a legend of the game, but is there a probability where we don't start Sunil Chhetri and we bring him off the bench, probably at that 45th minute mark, to make that impact?
The question with the impact is who's going to play him the ball? I mean,
again,
Sunil Chhetri can't run up to the Indian defensive line, take the ball, and Messi-like or Maradona-like dribble his way through and then score a goal. So the point to me is very simple. It doesn't matter if it's Sunil, if it's Ishan Pandita, if it's Manveer Singh, whoever plays up front. And Sunil did a lot of running on that day. Again, he tried to do whatever he could. the ball needs to get to the striker.
Yeah,
The
again,
striker
so
can only create something. So the point here is, can Sunil be a 45, 30-minute player? Yes, could be. The question is, what does it? This team has not played without Sunil Chhetri. That's the other problem which Igor much has. He's always played Sunil. He's not risked another striker per se, except when Sunil was actually sick. So
yeah,
therefore, we've not played without him. So I can't say yes or no because we don't have, so to say,
we
to
don't
go
have a
back to
body
your
of
line.
work.
We don't have any data.
Yeah, we don't have a body of work. But again,
Yeah.
like probably don't know who the creative force in this team is going to be, and that is going to be a major problem for Stimac
See,
to solve.
Brandon to me, as Hiren has said, I think is the most creative of the lot. The question is, Brandon has also come out of a long extended injury break, so that's
Yeah.
another thing. Thapa's come back from an injury. He looked shaky at Mohun Bagan when he played those two matches when he came back. So these questions are natural questions. So he even did not trust those two. He put Liston in as a number 10 initially.
Number
Yeah.
10, exactly.
Kind of
But
tells you.
sir, that's why I want Brendan in the first 45 minutes because that's where you can best utilize him. I don't see after the 60 minute matlab your legs are tired and there will be a much of a you can say a chance. So if you want to use Brendan, then those first 45 minutes will be perfect for to create a more chances
I mean,
rather than use him in the second half.
the other problem is like as Arunava pointed out, there are two very big problems that we have why we can't play beyond the 65th minute against teams that are way better than us. The first one is like again people coming back from injury, people not getting used to that space. The other problem is in the domestic circuit, a player at most plays a 30 game season probably, ends up playing 35, 40 matches at most. The best players in the world play 55, 60 games consistently. Probably we can't give them 60 games a season, but we can make sure that our domestic calendar gives them 48 games a season. So they have those muscle memory, those mentality to play in those big matches. I mean, like it won't be a very big improvement at the start, and it might not be a very big improvement ever. But if we are not giving them those opportunities, if we are not producing that body of work, we will probably never know.
Mm.
I have said this multiple times over the last few months, that we are in a situation where we need to be smart in regard to how to expand a season. We have seen in the last 6 months how the AFF has done it and how you should not do it, because I
Yeah.
think you now realize we've had too many matches. So you can't come out of a 20-25 window sort of a season and suddenly move to 40-45 in one go. Your other problem is that there are national team players, part of this squad, who are playing, who have not had a summer break. So de facto, they've been playing through for the last 18 months. That's another. So we our adjustments need to be strategic, and another point is Indian football conditions, to play in Indian football conditions. One match in India is like, I think, two matches in Europe.
Yeah.
Mm.
So that's also something which you should not forget.
Yeah.
If you're
Yeah.
playing in Goa or in Kerala, or in March onwards in Bengal, and then you play through the monsoons and through around Pujo and Diwali and all that stuff, it is hot and humid around India. This whole travel thing in India, out of own experience from the first season of the Indian Super League, traveling in India is a different thing than traveling in Europe. In Europe, it's smooth. You get in, you fly, you get off, you move on.
I
Getting
mean,
into an airport,
I mean
getting out, yeah.
Germany is the size of probably Maharashtra. So you can basically travel from again that's the geography there, the geography is huge. And again, as you said, Arunava, probably we'll have a debate on this sometime later. Of course, I know you have spoken about it multiple times.
Mm.
Happy to speak to you about this probably
Surely.
sometime later. Yeah. uh, there is definitely scope for expansion, but it needs to be very strategic to make sure that we do not put load in those players that they get injured for 2 3 seasons.
And
Yep.
also, what the problem is, I think we see this season in a very, very brutal way, is you have a top five and then you have a rest of the league.
Yeah.
So we have to be honest to ourselves. We don't have players for a 12-team league of a similar standard to give competition to each other. That's another fact which we, if it's hard to digest, but that's another reality. I think at the moment, a 10-team league is something which most probably would have been best for us because it keeps up the competition. We see that
Yeah,
in the women's game. A 7-team league is better than that 16-team tournament style competition. So therefore, the way forward, I think, has to be smart. It can't be a forced expansion. We need to go and expand step by step, but we also need to wait for the next generation of players to come through the youth development system. And then again, and our youth system needs to be there. We don't, again, where is our under 13, under 15 league? We're only talking about an under 17 league. So again, we're digressing again. But this is the Indian national team is the end product of what Indian football has done in the last 15, 20 years. And that is something which is a disturbing fact when especially Vietnam has just been mentioned. Vietnam is a prime example. They've done a lot of things right over the last 10, 15 years. I know a lot of friends of mine have worked on Vietnam or have worked in Vietnam. And
I,
they say the Vietnamese have exponentially developed.
I mean, another thing about that, I'm sure Arunava is aware of that. Vietnam has taken advantage of their geopolitical ties with Japan, and they have basically lobbied Japan to put in one of the foreign players as a Vietnamese player who can play as a home player, basically. So, can we take advantage of our geopolitical slow? So, for example, like we don't want the next generation of Sunil Chhetris to play in India. That is not going to develop our national team. We want the next generation of Sunil Chhetris, probably even play in Vietnam for that matter, because the quality of football there is much higher than it is in the ISL. And again, at some point, as Arunava said, I would probably want to see, even though we have this 12 team, I would probably want ISL to get rid of the playoff system and implement a split where they play against teams in the same half two more times. That might be a way to expand. We do. I mean, India as a national league. I mean, like I know people speak about 20 teams, but realistically, we are never going to have more than 14 teams who will have that financial capability to play at the top.
Yeah.
That's a debate. I think it could, but that will most probably take another 10 years to happen.
Yeah,
But I agree with you that we need to find ways of that, especially our national team players are playing through competitive games. At the moment, I feel, for example, the Super Cup happening during the Asian Cup is a good thing because it gives the young players or forces the young players to play. I mean, Chikara has been mentioned multiple times today, and he scored the other day as well for Mumbai City. But the point is, the other day everyone was talking about Gurkirat Singh before the tournament, right? So the discussion also shifts according to how a player is performing. But is that consistent? Gurkirat hasn't scored a goal. He's been getting minutes in this tournament. So give the boy time. Our talent needs time. Sunil Chhetri was not a straight path to get to success. Sunil Chhetri failed a few times,
multiple
and
times,
then
honestly.
after Mohun Bagan, his career was nearly over. If Rennery hadn't told him, "Chalo, GCC jate hai," the career would have been over, and he would have gone to college. And that happens to a lot of boys. So we have to be also realistic, and we need to support the players. And the point with Vietnam is, yes, you spoke about geopolitics in Vietnam, but I know also friends from Europe who've been involved in there. You brought in someone like a Philippe Troussier, who's experienced, who was involved in the growth of Japanese football. He's been involved in other parts of the world of growing football. We need that kind of a character. We need people in our technical departments who understand these things and who will also say things which are hard and tough, which the Indian ecosystem, the Indian stakeholders don't want to hear.
But
That
sir,
is a big thing.
just to interrupt, yesterday or today, I think Tom Bayer mentioned. Someone asked him about the Indian football. He said, couple of years back, I visited India, and I have there are lots of you can say childrens who are interested in Indian football, and I have talked to the higher authorities and mentioned the suggestion, or you can say changes you need to bring, but they are not interested to, or you can say implement those changes. So exactly that is.
Tom was here 10, 12, no, yeah, 10, 11 years ago. In 2013, he was here.
Uh,
When Rob Barn was creating Lakshya, the plan at that time to sort of, a 10-year plan for Indian football. Tom Bayer said 10 years ago what to do, not to do. And Tom Bayer has been influential in what happened in Japanese youth football. The point is that we need to listen to people. We can't think that we know everything and we internally can sort it out. I think that is also a realization. And we need to be honest to ourselves that if people are jumping up and down after that performance against Australia, where we have been one of the weakest teams in this competition so far, and there's one match to go, then that should be a worrying sign to us. If we are happy with our performance with Australia, sorry guys, I cannot be happy with that performance. I expect more from India, but I also know that, of course, there are limitations to this team, and these are realities. But again, we need to speak about it. We need to speak about it. The stakeholders need to speak about it, and the stakeholders under the leadership of the AFF then needs to make the necessary changes that when we play in 2027, that we are in a better situation than we are now. Because if you look at us now, of course, our group this year is much tougher than our group was in 2019. But in 2019, we were, people were excited to see India. I was excited to see India. I was there in the UAE, in Abu Dhabi, in Dubai, in Sharjah. People were really excited to see India.
I mean, people were really excited. Arunava brings that point. Like now, people are not, because like I remember on the day of India Bahrain game, I was traveling to Liverpool. We were following the game on Twitter, and there were about 20-25 Indians in that bus who were like, "Has India scored? Have we considered?" And there was that excitement. And since 2019, I don't know. I just feel for some reason that we have gone backwards instead of going forward.
And this is one thing I totally agree, because I remember when Igor Stimac came in, the match against Oman in Guwahati, I was there, and I was there in Qatar when we drew them as well. There was excitement. And then COVID hit, and I don't know what happened. Since COVID, we've not been able to somehow get out of that mold, because against Oman, a simple set piece, Brandon corner, Sunil goal, 1-0, but we had opportunity to score a second. After 70 minutes, we were dead. We were physically dead. But against Qatar, we fought for 90 minutes. And again, also, if I go back to 2009, that match in Qatar, in Doha, or the match against UAE, we are playing in Abu Dhabi, 40,000 plus in the stadium, and about 30,000 were Indians. Right?
Yeah.
So the support is there. We had the support the other day against Australia. We will have the support against Uzbekistan. We will have the support against Syria. It is not about the support. The support is brilliant. Wherever we go in the Middle East, we will always get support. But on the other side, how do we improve things? How do we get things going in a way that we are able to change things for the better, for the long term?
Yeah, basically we need to inspire the nation.
Just Rohit More asking about Shaji's in Qatar. Shaji is an AFC Exco member. He's not there in the name of the AFF. He's there in the name of the AFC. So anyone and everyone talking about that, right or wrong, it's a different discussion. He's there on a role that he has, and again, right or wrong, different discussion. So yeah.
But sir, I think Nani. Just to add that he become the AFC Exco member through AFF, na? When he elected as AFC Exco member.
No, okay, no, AFC Exco has got nothing to do with AIFF. So that is actually funnily a part of my PhD. I have to discuss the legal structure. And
no. Again, AFC and FIFA are totally independent body. That's why also Praful Patel, when removed by the government, was still a FIFA council member, right?
Council member, yes.
So therefore, and if you're elected into the body, you have to then bring up the matter to the body and say, listen, this person for this and this reason should be removed from the body, which has not been done by the AFF.
Exactly, that's my point, sir. That's my point.
So the point here is very simple. It is anyone who said in 2022 that things will change by removing the old regime. This is where we stand in January 2024.
I mean,
it is not so easy. It is to run the AFF. Anyone who comes in and runs the AFF, it is not so easy, because it's not. It's like the Titanic, which has already hit the iceberg, and you're trying to plug the holes that the ship doesn't go underwater. That's the situation.
I mean, even about that. So, what is the AIFF? It's basically a body made up of those state bodies, right? Who vote for the president. I mean, AIFF can do a lot of things, but most of those state federations. So, the state I am from, not state, union territory, Andaman and Nicobar Islands, the football federation's office runs out of a grocery store. Of course, what do you expect from those state federations? What do I mean? Those state federations, a lot of them are there just to fulfill their agenda. I mean, like, there are some state leagues which finish their state league in 7 days, literally 7 days. This cannot go on. I mean, like, we're talking. So the AIFF, I don't
Sarthak, there
know.
are Sarthak, there are states who don't run state leagues. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
we can
Andaman and
even go
Nicobar.
to that level. We can
Yeah.
go to that level. That's the problem, no? The
I mean,
problem is the structure of Indian football, and the point here is also that when we're talking about what they're doing, Rahul is a BFC fan. And you see, Bangalore FC, of course, started in the I League. The focus was the I League. But see how the club has grown over the last 10 plus years, right? They've done first, they did their grassroots and youth football in Bangalore. Then they built the complex in Bellary. Then they thought, listen, it's time now to start a women's division, women's football. And they've tried to grow it organically over the years. But even if you see BFC's first team, BFC is facing the same thing that a lot of teams face. BFC is like in a different way, like a Man United, where you don't know why the team is not succeeding on the field. What is the problem? BFC's tried a lot of things, but the other things, which is off the field, BFC has done a lot of things right. And there are other entities who are trying to do that. And the aim for us is, and the dream is, and since I've been starting to work in Indian football over 25 years ago, nearly 26 years ago now, I always said, when I started IndianFootball.com in 1998, I said, my dream is one day to see India play in a World Cup. And World Cup meaning qualifying on merit.
Yeah. I mean, that is all our dream. I mean, like when people say, like, I believe we are trying to bid for some of the games with the UAE for the 2030 World Cup. I mean, like, when I posted about it on Twitter, a lot of people joked, but there is a real chance that might happen. But for India to play on merit in the World Cup, the first thing we need to do is qualify on merit for the age group World Cups, because that is the body of work 20-25 years down the line when we will actually qualify for the World Cups. I mean, like, let's be very honest, on merit, with the current way, the current trajectory, I don't think we are going to qualify for the World Cup at least until 2052. I mean, that's my honest opinion. And that's a long way away. But we can definitely qualify for the age group World Cups, under 17, under 20, under 23 World Cup, not the World Cup, the Olympics, which is an under 23 tournament effectively. If we keep building our body of work over those tournaments, I am sure, like, good things await Indian football. And as I believe Ajit pointed out here, there should be a different stream on how we can strategically improve player development.
But there's another problem, which is our biggest problem. If you see also the FIFA Academy, which is coming up, that 50 kids were chosen and 38 were chucked out. And they were saying, oh, they were not good enough. But in the end, we all know what the reason is. They're all overage. I think that's our biggest menace and biggest curse at youth football. We need to work on that. I mean, if we're looking, again, 2034 with the Saudis can happen. There might be something. If FIFA sees a merit in it, they will tell the Saudis, you know what? Give India 2 groups. It could potentially happen. But the point is that the whole, again, and it's very, very easy to always blame the AFF. Everybody involved in Indian football, every stakeholder has a role to play. And everybody is only looking at themselves. I mean, we have got rampant cheating in age group tournaments. That under 17 tournament is actually an under 22 most probably. So what's the use? Why are we playing that tournament? It makes no sense. Because the genuine 16, 17-year-old boys or even 15-year-old boys, they're being outmuscled by men. They're not playing amongst boys. They're playing against men.
Yeah.
And there needs to be an understanding. The punishment needs to be harsh. If an East Bengal is doing this, you are out of the tournament. It doesn't
Uh,
matter. You are
uh,
out.
Yeah.
I mean the thing I don't understand is like if someone is playing by fraud in an age group tournament, that means they have forged their document, right? Why is it not a crime? Why are they not going to jail? Why are there not harsh punishments for that? Not just on that player, but also on the club officials who have accepted that document. And it's probably the club officials and the coaches who are promoting those cheating. They're
Yeah,
basically asking them to forge those
Yeah.
documents. It
yeah.
should be a crime. Literally, it should be a crime to forge documents. It's a criminal offense in my. And I mean, like, I don't know. I have got a different suggestion about probably how we can try to reduce cheating in age group tournaments. But I don't think that is going to work in Indian football because forging documents is ingrained in the fabric of age group tournaments in India.
It's not about the in the Indian football also. It's the cultural thing. We like to take the shortcuts in everywhere, not only in the, you can say,
Yeah,
the football. So that's
it's in football,
bound to
it's in
happen.
cricket, it's in every tournament,
Everywhere.
it's in
Yeah.
every sport. But again, like since we are sticking to football, as I said, it's ingrained. Forging age group documents is ingrained in the fabric of Indian sports, as we can say. I mean, of course, there are different things we can do. Probably in an under 16 tournament, allowing two overage players who haven't played a lot of minutes when they were under 16, probably things like that. Have a big discussion with stakeholders regarding what we can do. Probably uh, the Indian government stepping in and commissioning a white paper. I mean, I'm sure the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, it falls under their purview, not just for football, but reducing age group fraud in every other sport. So they can commission research on that, how we can do that. And if we cannot do that, I think like there will be problems because again in those age group tournaments, all the coaches, they are paid to win, and it starts with a domino effect. If one starts, the other starts, and it goes on and goes on.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I think we can, like we always say this in the end. Let's be hopeful. Let's hope for these sort of things to change it. I think the only problem with age fraud is again, unless you have a mechanism to really detect for sure a kid's age, what are we going to do? I mean, do we have a mechanism? We don't. I mean, they rely on the bone test, which is again, it is marginal. It is marginally 1 or 2 years greater or lesser. So it's so hard, but yeah, these are the challenges that we have, and hopefully, guys, against Uzbekistan, the Indian team turns up, and we have something to celebrate. Like we always say, we go into these games with optimism and hope, and let's hope we get something out of that game. Thanks, Hiren. Thanks, Arnava, and thanks, Sarthak, so much for joining us today. And we've had a nice long discussion on Indian football, general stuff, and of course, Uzbekistan versus India. Everybody in the chat, please like and share these videos. Subscribe to the channels. Arun Food, SportsKhabri, and CuriousHarry. And yeah, we'll hopefully have Sarthak back sometime soon as well, and we can have these sort of nice discussions again. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.